But first, hijacking democracy. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, today, if you weren't up super early, you might have missed something super pretentious and super hypocritical. Biden hosted something called the Summit for Democracy.
Choices we make, in my view, in this moment, are going to fundamentally determine the direction our world is going to take in the coming decades. Will we allow the backward slide of rights and democracy to continue unchecked? Or will we, together, have a vision and the vision, not just a vision, the vision and courage to once more lead the march of human progress and human freedom forward?
Of course, the ultimate irony here is that almost everything the Democrats are doing in supporting these days weakens our democracy and our freedom. Mandating vaccines and masks, investigating concerned parents, calling them terror threats, of course, canceling political adversaries via their social media pals, appeasing China, eliminating voter ID, opposing signature verification in elections, and promoting ballot harvesting. Does any of that sound pro-freedom to you? Thus, when Biden warns about democracy backsliding, he's preemptively excusing what will likely be a crushing loss for his party in the midterms and even in 2024. You know they're desperate when they send out the person with the approval rating of, I don't know, a planter's wart.
Here in the United States, we know that our democracy is not immune from threats. January 6th looms large in our collective conscience. And the anti-voter laws that many states have passed are part of an intentional effort to exclude Americans from participating in our democracy.
Yeah. Her argument is actually that laws requiring you to show an ID to vote or to clear dead people off the voting rolls, to verify signatures on mail-in ballots, they're somehow, to her, anti-democratic. Because they believe illegal immigrants should vote, and they think the biggest threats facing America look like this guy, the Coors Light trespasser who took selfies in the Capitol on January 6th. You see that guy? Yeah, Kamala. That guy and others like him, they're going to throw us into a totalitarian abyss. So pathetic. Now, the reason Democrats are so rabid about the so-called Freedom to Vote Act that got invoked a lot today is that in practical terms, it would be a Democrat incumbent protection racket. Among other things, it would bypass state authority by nationalizing rules for voter registration and mail-in ballots. That means bye-bye meaningful election security laws. Of course, liberals don't get lots of help from media elites to sell their myths about the dark cloud, anti-democracy cloud hanging over the GOP. People like former conservatives, David Brooks, who are kind of stuck in an early 2000s time warp, help market the Trump as authoritarian myth, writing, Trumpian authoritarianism doesn't renounce holy war, it embraces holy war, assumes it is permanent. In fact, seeks to make it so. In the Trumpian world, disputes are settled by raw power and intimidation. Holy war? Has David never heard of Dick Cheney? Does he really not know how often the Bush family relied on raw power and intimidation to get its way? But Brooks goes on. As long as the warrior ethos dominates the GOP, brutality will be admired over benevolence, propaganda over discourse, confrontation over conservatism, dehumanization over dignity. 2 words, David. Abu Ghraib. Now, who was president when that was going on? And who was the vice president? No. Hint, it wasn't Donald Trump or Mike Pence. The establishment that we've known for decades is steadily losing power and being replaced by smarter, better people. I like to think of Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State versus Anthony Blinken. Enough said. Now, not only is the GOP getting smarter, its reach is broadening and now appealing to minorities once thought safely in the Democrat camp, at least they were under previous years. In 2020, Trump put together the most diverse GOP coalition in 60 years. How's that authoritarian? Hispanic voters in Texas, Florida are flocking to the Republican banner. Republicans also made huge inroads with suburban women in Virginia who were concerned about what their kids are being taught in school and then vilified for it. Now, the fact is, Republicans, not Democrats, have become more democratic. Think about it this way. Since 1988, the GOP was essentially run by one family, the Bushes. Now, if you're on their good side, all was well. But if you question them, oh my goodness, if you dared to criticize them, you were shunned. But it's not a democracy when your party's controlled by big donors and one small clique or family. For years, the conservative grassroots, they were demanding real change in things like foreign policy, border policy, trade policy. But they were summarily ignored until Trump came along. Now, David Brooks and others like him, they want to return to the old days when the GOP voters lost gracefully and lost regularly by following naive globalist dreamers.
We see a China that is becoming one of the most dynamic and creative societies in the world. America welcomes the emergence of a strong and peaceful and prosperous China.
Which brings me back to Biden's summit today. Now, the biggest tell that this has nothing to do with promoting democracy is the fact that the president of the EU was invited.
We know how painful it is when a small group takes unlimited power and imposes a single vision on all of society. It is why we have put forward measures to help protect people online from illegal content, hidden political advertisement, or disinformation. It is why we are proposing to add hate speech and hate crime to the list of crimes in our treaties.
Yeah, I'm gonna trust her to regulate hate speech. Okay. Now, let's see. A transnational, undemocratic body that's totally unaccountable to the voters in their own countries, imposing speech restrictions to punish their political opponents. Now, of course, Biden and Pelosi would love nothing more than to do the same here, and they're trying to. They see what's coming down the road if they actually let democracy play out here. So they're going to pull out all the stops to make sure that does not happen, even if they have to hijack democracy to do it. And that's the angle.